I'm going to call this meeting to order of the North Andover School Committee for November 17, 2016. Our first order of business is for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise, everyone. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. And as a reminder, we're being recorded tonight, and I would ask everyone to please silence their mobile devices if they could. I apologize for starting a little bit late. The school committee and the senior staff were at a training for the new public records law over at the middle school, and it ran a little bit over. Sometimes it's tough to get those lawyers to end, because they're always on the clock. They're always billing by the minute. That's the reason why they keep on talking and talking and talking. Anyways, first order of business is public comment. Is anyone here to give public comment tonight? Seeing none. Next on the agenda is recognition. And maybe I'd ask Christy Hale to come forward. Dun, 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 dun. So, we are here to recognize Christy Hale in recognition of your selection as a finalist for Congressman Seth Moulton's first annual Peter J. Gomes Citizenship Award. And I noticed you are accompanied by two good friends who also nominated you, Melissa Martin and our former colleague Zora Warren. Welcome. Those of you who know Christy, I think we all know Christy. We know that she's a great volunteer, especially for the schools, for the libraries. She's made a big impact in town. Definitely a worthwhile award. So we have a citation for you, Christy. And again, it's from the North Andover School Committee in recognition of being a finalist for the first annual Peter J. Gomes Citizenship Award. So I guess I'll come over and present it to you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I'm not getting in there. No, it's going on Twitter. There's no way I'm getting in there.
Oh, no.
Better when I'm not in it.
I agree, me too. No, I really don't. Just kidding. Thank you. I don't want to yell from the microphone. Amy and Stan were at the Board of Selectmen meeting when I was over there. And I have lots of big ideas, lots of times, and it's always good when there are lots of people to support it and actually embrace the big ideas. So my crazy people behind me and people sitting in front of me who have been very supportive of all the things that we've been able to bring for initiatives. So thank all of you for helping me do these things. And to my husband, who gives up a lot of his time to finagle schedule so that I can also do crazy things. So.
I would just like to say, as new superintendent, you have jumped in with me on a whole bunch of crazy stuff, from the North Andover Education Foundation to this food rescue project, which is so exciting. And I just think your energy and your commitment to this town is really unparalleled, and I just want to thank you personally.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Woo!
Thank you. Our student report is Courtney or Cole here? Cole.
Cool.
Hi, Cole. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. Welcome. What do you got for us?
So the school is the trimester is basically coming to an end, and the Thanksgiving pep rally is coming up. So all those students are actively preparing and getting ready for that, as well as students in the school are trying to boost up their grades one final time before finals, and are very anxious for Thanksgiving break or the long weekend. But other than that, school's going pretty smoothly. There's all the clubs tonight had a meeting to get awareness about what they do in all those clubs and stuff like that. And other than that, school's just going well.
Good. Glad to hear it. Any questions from the committee for Mr. Cole? All right. Well, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Cole.
Have a good one.
Thank you very much. Moving right along, next item is consent agenda, approval of minutes. I would accept a motion to accept them as they're presented in the packet. So moved by Mr. McDevitt, second by Mr. Gross. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Okay, so those are approved. Okay, quickly, chair's report. Just real quickly, last Friday was Veterans Day. We had a couple of great events in town. The Thompson School Veterans Day event, always a great time. I know Mr. Gilligan started that tradition many years ago, ably carried on by Mr. Raymond. Did a fantastic job with Kathy O'Neill's help, of course. Then, of course, we had the parade and the ceremony on Veterans Day itself, and that was well attended as always. I want to thank the fifth graders and the volunteers at the Kittredge School for their fantastic primo pasta night, primo pasta night. I'm sorry, it was said both ways to me last night, but some of us attended. It was great. I know the superintendent was there for a little while last night as well.
There was a similar event at the high school for Sergeant. Mr. Gilligan was in.
Oh, okay.
Mamma Mia Pastaria.
Mamma Mia Pastaria.
Same night. We
Wow.
divided and conquered.
That was well done. Well done. I want to mention the email that I think most of the members got from the town manager regarding the Green Communities Act. I know last week, 2 weeks ago, we had some discussion about it. There was some uncertainty. I hope that was able to clarify some of the concerns we had about it. If you didn't receive it, let me know, and I'll make sure you guys get it. And lastly, I want to remind the committee that next meeting is December 1st, and we're going to have an in-depth presentation from KBA Architects about reducing class size, and they're going to present several options. We hope to get a draft proposal in your hands prior to that meeting, hopefully at the beginning of that week. So I would just count on that. I would count on that meeting being mostly about that proposal. So that's it for my chair's report. Superintendent's report.
Yeah, realistically, that report will come on the Tuesday because we have Jacqueline Woodson on the Monday.
And it's a short week the week before.
So,
that's right.
Just so you know, because it's a big day for us on the 28th with Jacqueline Woodson coming to town for the One Community, One Author experience all day. So my only report is something I sent out to the school community right before this meeting a few hours ago, which is around the lead testing. We had sent an email out to the whole school community 2 weeks ago. We tested 453 fixtures within the North Andover Public Schools. We found 9 that had action levels just concerning around lead and copper. 5 of those were not in use fixtures, so we got rid of those and removed those, and the 4 that were in use, we either did some remediation or testing. So, for instance, 2 of them we retested and found no concern, and then the other 2 we've really properly labeled around what can be used. I sent you the whole email. I just want to talk about why I sent a second email. The Boston Globe recently did something that increased concern, and I feel like they reported it in a way that said, the ECC, a problem. Well, there was 1 bubbler in the ECC, so I felt like given that reporting, it was important to kind of go back at it. But I did attach the original letter because I don't want people to think that we only responded because of the reporting, but we had already sent something weeks ago. So just want to let you know we're on that, working very closely with the town. And, I also want to remind anyone who's watching, this was a voluntary program that we did. I think I was talking to the reporter from the Eagle Tribune. There's only 2 cities or towns, Lawrence and us, who did it within this region. We were being proactive, which I think is really good practice. So this was not something that was required. It was us being proactive to make sure that our water is safe for our kids. Okay?
Yeah, I thought your email or your letter was very cool.
So, good.
Agreed.
Yeah, so just so you know that we're on top of it.
Thank you. Anything else on the superintendent's
Nope, that's
report?
it.
Okay. Moving on to old business. Second reading, approval of capital improvement plan for FY18. I would accept a motion to approve it as presented in the packet. Moved by Mr. Gross. Second by Mr. Limpert. Any discussion?
If I might,
Sure, absolutely.
I'm just curious, has there been conversation with the town manager on
The second round of the facilities improvement planning?
So the facilities master plan,
Master plan,
yes.
excuse me.
That's been 2.
Master plan 2,
Part
there has
2.
been extensive communication about that, and some of these projects, especially the elementary renovations, are proposed to be moved into facilities master plan 2. I think as we get into the conversation next week, we'll have a lot more clarity about that, but yes, there's absolutely conversation about it.
Yeah, so my concern is that we know that this probably doesn't accurately represent what our needs are,
Correct, it does not.
and we're being asked to present this as a final reading.
No, so if you'll see, the ones that we don't believe accurately represent our needs have TBD. So for instance, the Franklin renovations, it's $100,000 to just understand what we need to spend. And we purposely talked to the town manager about this, and we purposely put in TBD in places. If you'll notice the elementary renovations, it's $200,000, and that's just for planning. The next year would be TBD. So we wanted to be clear with the town manager that the funds that were in here were going to be used to kind of assess what the cost would be needed. So we were that's why we did not put dollar signs in some of these places.
And I guess, thank you, that helps a lot. My question now is, can we really wait till 2022 for these activities?
So you'll see next week when we present, 2 weeks, when we present the conversation about elementary school classroom size. This really is about a 5-phase process, and we're going to have to make some decisions, and so is the town. So it's not going to all get to be done at once.
So would it make sense to represent our higher priorities in FY20?
So the challenge, so the way this works is we add on at the end. We add on the 5th year. So last year I added year 4, and this year I'm adding year 5. The town manager is very aware that we're going to need to push some of these up, but most of that will be within facilities master plan too. We're having conversations about it, Brian.
I appreciate that. So, okay, I know my concern is this doesn't accurately represent our needs, and we're being asked to
Were
vote.
we approving just the cost
Well,
of fiscal
no,
year
we're-
18 or the whole dynamic thing?
So we're not approving, well, I mean, what we're approving is our request.
Right.
And what we decided to do, working with the town manager and the assistant town manager and Jamelia and myself, is to put in things that we know we're going to have to deal with so that they get on the docket. The reality is we do not see many of the things that we're going to need to deal with within the limits of the CIP, that they're going to need to be moved to a facilities master plan too.
Okay, so what's the harm, if I could, to move in, for example, middle school to 2019 for evaluation 2020 for construction, just as a placeholder?
So the way that this has been done is it has been done that you add only to the final year. That's been the process approved within the town of North Andover. So if you will notice, the kind of big work comes when I would have been able to add, which was last year.
The other thing that we're not seeing here, Mr. Gross, is this is just a small part of the bigger plan.
Right,
So the
right.
town manager has already made the timing adjustments that he feels is appropriate and what he can support in terms of borrowing. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're not seeing in like FY20
Yep.
that he may have on his list. For example, at some point the work needs to be done on the senior center, and I don't know what year that comes. But anyway, we're just seeing our little window into the CIP, and so he's done a bunch of other stuff that we'll find out later.
But just to be clear, the process has been, at least as far as I can understand, that in the town of North Andover, you add the 5th year. So
Right.
last year, I added what is now year 4, and this year I added what is now year 5. The year 3 would have been needed to add it under the previous superintendent.
And our experience has been, as we know, that we've really made some radical changes to the CIP based even on this approach. For example, Kittredge wasn't on the list at all.
right.
The Kittredge, we showed up and we did it, right? So that was. There are examples of when this is changed because it makes sense to change.
And we'll be, I mean, the town manager and I have discussed incredibly transparently that $1.5 million for FY18 is not going to be sufficient to deal with the elementary school classroom size that we need. And we'll have a lot more clarity on that in 2 weeks.
I'd echo that as well. Myself and the vice chairman were brought into a conversation with the superintendent and the assistant town manager this week, and I got the sense that they clearly understand our needs. And I don't want to say just wait and see, but wait and see.
Yeah, no, I'm with that.
We're going to have a great presentation, I think, on the 1st, and I hope on the 15th we're going to vote to have a really solid plan to reduce class size that I think will address a lot of things you're getting at right now.
Okay, I hope so, because I'd like to go on record that I don't think we wait till 2022
Right.
to address our class size issues.
We agree.
Thank you.
But I think this represents really getting on the list.
On the list.
Not the timing, but there's a need.
So there's an
We've identified.
opportunity in the future to move some of these back.
Correct.
And I look forward to be pleasantly surprised by that.
So if you look at this, the first opportunity I had under this administration to get something on the list, I got the middle school
Yes.
in Franklin on the list.
Absolutely in full agreement. I'm just wondering for the committee, so yes, thank you. You've accomplished the first task, and for us, is this really the right schedule? But I'll defer to Mr. Limpert and Mr. Teresi to pleasantly surprise us.
Yeah. Can I, Dr. Bryce, can you just remind me, why are we highlighting this paving
I have no, it's not meant to be highlighted, I apologize.
Okay. I just curious.
Okay, so we have a motion made and seconded to approve this as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5-0 vote.
Yep.
Okay. Second order of business, an old business, is the second reading of a overnight trip, DECA state and national competitions. To Quebec City, Canada, and the music trip to Atlantic City, New Jersey. I would accept a motion to approve this.
In entirety?
Well, we can do them individually if you'd like to do them individually. I know they're both listed at the same.
So there were three, right? Four, excuse me, so.
We discussed them
We
last
discussed
time.
them, so we can do them individually if you like, that's fine.
Just want to formulate the motion correctly. So move to approve the DECA state competition, Boston DECA national competition, Anaheim,
And the exchange trip to Quebec, as well as the music trip to to Atlantic, New Jersey, as presented.
Motion made by Mr. Gross, second by Mr. McDevitt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. 5-0. 5-0, I'm sorry. It's been a long day.
Can I just, two comments?
Sure.
A, thank you.
First, did your discussion. I apologize.
There was a question about the Atlantic City trip and also going to California. We spoke with Ms. Durkin. The Atlantic City trip does not miss a lot of school, and it's a very small group, so there is not a concern about that. And then the only other thing is, I just have a question of policy. So we are actually planning our 17-18 trips right now, which I know sounds crazy, but we're actually soliciting our students interested, and I just want to let you know we're doing that. We haven't yet approved those trips, but we need to go out and say, are you interested? I think the two trips we're talking about are Nicaragua and the Dominican Republic. We will get those on the docket for the spring, but I don't want you to hear about these trips for next year without knowing. Obviously, any money that's put down is fully refundable if we don't accept it. But one of the things is if we get in early, we actually can save some funding and we can know how many kids are interested, because we don't want to say we want to go to Nicaragua if only 2 kids are interested in going. So I just, you might hear about them, but please understand we're not moving on without your approval.
And do you start with parent meetings as well?
Yes.
At this point, like this far in advance?
Yeah, so now once you have to start to say I'm interested in going, we have to then start committing to going. Yeah.
And our only problem from a few years ago was that it seemed like we were getting constrained because firm commitments had been made to reservations and stuff, and so we're kind of getting back. We felt like we were getting back then. This is not the case now, so.
Right.
But I do appreciate the fact that you're going to let us know very early about that.
Yeah, and I'm surprised they're planning so early in advance, and impressed. So.
Well, again, to get a level of interest to see if
Yeah.
you want to pursue the trip. I
And make
understand
the
that.
relationship with the
Yeah,
exchange.
so just so you know.
Yeah, no, I understand. Appreciate it.
It makes sense. I'm just curious, out of curiosity, can we collect money for a trip that hasn't been approved?
We can collect money, but it has to be fully refundable. That's what we've agreed to with the different organizations we're working with.
Great. Any other questions? Okay. Next item is the second reading, approval of the school committee meeting dates January through June. I didn't receive any feedback from membership on these dates, so okay.
I forgot to email you, but I do have 2 potential conflicts. One maybe January 12th and one maybe May 18th.
What's the second one?
May 18th.
Okay.
At this point, I'm
Okay.
not positive. I know
Not
I've got
positive.
conferences those weeks. I'm not sure of dates. So,
Mhm.
but I'm just gonna. I'm fine with approving it, and if I can do remote, one is a local conference. So
On the 12th, you mean?
May 18th.
May 18th? Well, I think the January dates, I think, are really important to lock down. You content with locking these down for now, and if we have to make a change later on?
I'm fine with that.
Is there any other?
Yeah,
I'm sure. I was
Sorry,
waiting.
yeah. 26th, 2nd, and 16th, I do have plans to be out of the area, and unfortunately, 2 of them are in time zones that are inconsistent with remote participation. So I just want to make sure there is quorum, and perhaps I can provide you comment on the agenda items in a written format.
So you said the 26th and the what, Brian?
Jan 26, Feb 2, and Feb 16. I'm not quite sure which of those will be, in an opposing time zone that would just prevent remote participation.
So one of those is definitely the vote on the budget.
Yeah, one of them the budget, one's the public hearing on the budget, I think. I think the 26th is the public hearing on the budget, and the second is the actual
Is the
vote.
vote.
The actual vote on the budget.
Okay.
We don't have a ton of flexibility because I have to get that
I know,
in.
I know. That's why
I think on the 2nd is the date I'm supposed to submit it.
Feb 2.
I think so. I can go back to the
That's the
budget
date, yeah.
timeline, but I believe
All right,
that's...
so that one, if possible, I'd like to do remote.
So just
to
you
voice.
request to Bev, he's requesting remote.
For Feb 2, and it's going to be very late. But thank you for that opportunity.
We'll call you to say yes.
Just make sure the nodding head is going in the right
Vice
direction.
Professor, he cannot vote remote, right?
No, he can't.
I think you can vote
As
remote.
long as he is present for the
Physically.
entire meeting, physically present, and if there's any connection that is lost, he is then counted as a no, not as a no vote, as a non-voting member.
Like abstention.
It's as if he was not here,
Yeah.
absent.
So
Thank
We'll
you.
clarify that.
Yeah, hopefully we can make sure that both ends of the connection are not wireless, which has been a problem in the past.
Or we might decide on the minimum level, which should be audio only, which has been a problem being maintained.
Okay, well, we have a little bit of time to
No,
figure that out.
No, I don't believe that that's acceptable. I think you visibly have to be
Gotta
present
be the
as
flow
well
man.
as audibly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the date, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And that's why I didn't respond, because I knew that we were
Okay.
kind of up against the
I
wall
just
here.
checked it.
So what's your pleasure? We going to accept these as they are?
Let's make a motion to accept these dates as written with Mr. Gross remote on the 2nd of February.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Mably, seconded by Mr. Limpert. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, the ayes have it. Okay, FY 17 budget status update. Mr. Millie's not present, so I assume that you're
I'm up.
you're right.
So we gave you what we've been giving you. I just want to highlight one thing, which is important to understand. So we assumed a circuit breaker amount to come back. We believed it would be 72%. Our first quarter came back at 70%, so we are actually running a $100,000 deficit in our circuit breaker reimbursement. But given that currently our out-of-district tuitions are not at a place that we're above moving into the contingency, we're assuming at this point we're going to have to go $100,000 into the contingency, the special education contingency, to cover the lack of what we thought through circuit breaker. We will communicate that to the FinCom, but I just kind of wanted to let you know that that was a $100,000 deficit that, circuit breakers for special ed, it's completely reasonable to go into the special ed contingency for that. So that's kind of the only blip that we have right now on our finances.
That's certainly something that's not in our control.
Yeah.
Right, that's state government.
So, and then if I can answer any questions, I'm happy to, but that's the one kind of highlight.
Question from the committee? Brian?
Just briefly, it looks like our maintenance is burning hot. Is that
By design, across all of our maintenance and repairs?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we are talking a lot about is this kind of preventative maintenance, and if we can do more of it. So it isn't by,
So it's not an uptick, it's.
Yeah,
because
we're
doing maintenance early enough.
we're trying.
Okay.
And a lot of maintenance, I think it's done over the summer.
Right, so that's the other
So
part.
Okay.
That's the beginning.
The major maintenance is over the summer.
Great,
It's hard to do maintenance in the middle of the year.
great. Thank you, just checking.
Good
Can I
question.
ask a quick question? It's going to sound odd, but I mean, we're at 17% of the fiscal year.
Yep.
Correct? And that's, I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding that. Oh, no, sorry.
No, it's
Never
FY
mind.
17.
Okay. All right, the way that the spacing was, I was off. Okay.
Yep. So we're at 27%, right?
Yeah, just about that.
So if anything's, and again, some of the times the salaries are a little off because of summer and they're higher in summer and,
Okay.
Stipends.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking we were projected to be at 17%.
and you'll see that some of the expenses, like the expenses per school, are often higher than 27% because they buy a bunch of stuff prior to the beginning of the year.
Right, okay.
it would be concerning if like a major salary line that didn't make sense. But like, for instance, central office is at 40%, but we're all 12-month employees, so it's different.
Gotcha. Sure.
Or most of us are.
And administration staff, like principals, when they are in for the are they counted as part of the high school salaries, or are they counted as more central office?
So if it's a high school person, they're counted high school, I believe.
Okay, so like the principal of an elementary
It
school,
would be
their
within that
salary is
school.
reflected within the school.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay, there's no vote necessary on this item. Oh, Jude, another question?
I just, it's this. Only change, so we'd received some information, hard copy, about student activity reports. We'll get a subsequent
Yeah, so
discussion.
Mr. Mealy is not here, so I didn't want to get into that tonight,
Okay,
but
okay.
we sent that to you. He wanted me to tell you two things to make sure that you knew, is that this is a voluntary audit that we go through every 3 years to make sure that we're in compliance, because student activity accounts is a place where school districts can get in trouble. So we're always very cognizant. And the rules have changed within the last little bit about student activities accounts, so the issues that have been highlighted are a result of the rule changes, not as a result of our practices being changed.
Okay.
So he will get into that next time.
Okay.
But it didn't make sense to have me do it without him,
No,
because
no,
he has
no,
much
no, I
more
understand,
knowledge
I
about it.
understand. I just,
Quick question. I think I got 6 copies of that report.
So it's for each different activity.
There's 6 different reports.
Different
each
reports.
different school.
Yeah.
It looks so similar. I was,
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Everybody?
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's why.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, moving along. First reading of the in-depth strategic plan.
So we have the in-depth strategic plan here for you, and I know that you may be suffering a little bit of strategic plan fatigue. So we're this is our complete. And I would like to, just for the record, Chair, notice the glossary at the end of it.
I know.
Just wanted you to be clear that that has been added in the last few days. So. Just want to be clear. What we thought would make sense is for the 3 of us to go through any significant changes that we have made, or highlight some specific areas from when we talked about it first in the summer and then earlier in the fall. So we're not going to go through the whole thing. We just thought it would be helpful to go through some changes. So one is the format, and I hope you've seen that before. So we're going to start with the first initiative, and just a little bit about the format here. The way this will appear is this is actually a Google Doc, so this will be on our website, and anyone can click any of the initiatives and go to the subsequent pages. And then there's the all students professional practice and consistent and rigorous. So if you go to the second page, you can see an overview of all the students' objective and everything that we're doing on one page. But then if you want to look at a specific initiative, so for instance, the next page is to improve district programming to address the variable needs of our students, you can get into really the work plan. So if that makes sense to you. So Dr. Straight, a little bit, any changes on the improving district programming to address the needs of all kids?
Yes, there's a couple areas that I'd specifically like to highlight for you. The first one is discussing the developing, enhancing the special education programs that we have, the entrance and exit criteria, as well as developing a blind process. So what's happening there is our ETLs and principals are visiting all of the different programs because they're housed in different schools. So we have a therapeutic program, we have a language-based program, a variety of other different types of programs to meet the students' variable needs. And they're visiting these different programs to gain a good, solid understanding of what they are. The next step that we've started is to really develop, so who is a student that would be in a language-based learning sub-separate kind of program? Who is a student that would be in a therapeutic program? What is the criteria for entrance? You know, what will happen in that program, and then what is the criteria for exiting that student back into the general education area? So really developing that so everybody has a good solid understanding of what these specific students' needs are, who are the kinds of teachers or specialists we need to have working in those programs. And the other final piece of that we've started sort of looking at is really delving into what is the process for accessing that. So for example, if a student is looking to go to an out-of-district school, for example, that's a request. There's a specific process, so it's really analyzing all of the student assessments, doing some observations of the student, working with the current student team as well as the parents to make a determination if they would be suitable for those programs.
Great.
And the other piece to highlight is the Understanding Our Differences, which has been taking place in all of our schools, the elementary schools. It's going really quite well. The students are really welcoming to the ideas of understanding our differences and the different speakers, which are high school kids that are coming in and sharing about their own specific either learning disabilities or health issues that make their day in school more challenging for them. And then the kids are doing some activities, so it's really going super well. Some of the kids are doing writing activities after the fact, and they're sharing pictures or quotes or something that's really impacted them with regards to the activities.
And we'd like to thank the APAC for all their incredible work on that.
And
Yeah.
organization, the organization's been phenomenal, and we continue looking for volunteers, so.
Mr. Chair, I had a quick question about that program. So, Dr. Strait, we see that going on every year going forward, so we purchased it once, and now that we've purchased it, we're allowed to use it as much as we want. Is that correct?
We would need some additional materials, so they're hands-on approaches for kids, so we would have to reinvest. It's not a large
Right,
cost
but
for this.
we have permission
Yes.
going forward always if we
Correct.
want to use, that's
And we will have to pay a little bit to understanding our differences each year.
annually. That's what I was curious
Yeah.
about, okay.
Correct.
But again, it's covered through a grant and
Which is,
APAC, and it's
yeah,
working really well.
fantastic. I've enjoyed
I mean,
participating
the whole
in it.
program is only $2,500,
Yeah, that's
even the
nothing.
first
Okay.
year.
Right.
For what you're getting out of it,
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
It's amazing, it
Yeah.
really is, it's wonderful.
And you've done some?
Yeah, I've done two.
It's awesome.
Learning disabilities are great.
It's eye-opening, isn't it?
It is.
So I don't know if it makes sense, if there's any questions about this one, and then we're going to go through all 11, or do you want to do by each overall objective?
Do there are any questions on this?
Can I just help me on? How do I relate this to these individual sheets?
So what I would say is if you look at the first one, which is the all students, right? If you look at improving district programming, you'll see the foundations that are in place. The phase 1 actions are really what's spelled out in the work plan, Stan, right? And then the phase 2 actions are not spelled out. We will spell those out. So this is really, the work plans are the phase 1.
This is this.
Yep. And the phase 1 actions are being spelled out. Does that help? Does that help?
Yes, it does, yes.
Great. So if we move on to the next one, it's around decreasing class size, and we've talked a lot about this. This is our joint goal, so this shouldn't look anything. And really all I was going to highlight, I don't think I need to talk much about this, is that we will be having the feasibility study report at our next school committee meeting. And as this moves on, I think the timeline is pretty clear if we're going to be able to make a difference around reducing class sizes. And this is, again, just really the first phase work plan, understanding that phase 1 is probably one of many. Make sense?
Any questions on that one? Maybe more questions next week, but-
Dr. Strait, SEL?
So SEL is our social emotional learning initiative, and if we understand the basics of really having the capacity to understand your emotions, having the capacity to socialize in the dynamic classrooms that we have these days, we're really looking at building a foundation for all kids, starting in every single classroom, so students, start really learning how to regulate their own emotions, recognize when they may be a little anxious about something. So we're having our guidance counselors and our nurses working together, because who are the people that see these kids most often? You're either going to have a tummy ache, you're going to end up in the nurse's office, or you're going to go see your guidance counselor. So they're working together to really assess what do we need for a curriculum that we can push into those classrooms at what we would call the Tier 1 support system, which is just giving instruction in the general classroom. And really looking at it, having something that's systematic across the district, so all kids are getting the same types of learning to support their emotions and support their socialization. Coupled with that, once we make some of those determinations, what we'll be doing is really looking at what the budgetary constraints are and what we can put in for the budget that we'll be moving forward and having those discussions with you. So I think it's the important thing to note is that we're really tying the different departments together to really look at this and work together as a team.
Great. Any questions on this one?
No question. At some point in the planning, in this plan or in this planning process, would we actually try to do any of the quantification of the expenses, the resources
In
needed?
some places where we know the numbers, they're already in there. If we don't know the numbers,
Like here, there could be numbers for the, what Dr. Shea was just talking about. Would we ever put them?
yeah, once we know them, we'll put them in.
Okay,
So you'll see later on in the plan, if we know the numbers, they're in.
okay. I'm good.
Yeah, and last one there, Dr. Straight, in terms of communication and collaboration.
So a couple things that we've really started digging in, and we're really looking at supporting. Particularly, we've been developing some professional development for our co-taught teaching at the secondary level. So we're looking at the core classes and putting special education teachers and general education teachers together. So the principals, Mr. Gilligan and myself have been working on looking at who can we bring in to support those teachers, because it's really like a good marriage, if you will, you know, really understanding what the relationships are and how to work together so that you can bring instruction to the students and have it be. Or that.
Not the same.
Not the same. And the other area that we're looking at, continuing developing the understanding of teaching students with language-based disabilities, and that's really pushing that into the general education classroom as well. So we've contracted with Landmark Outreach, which does extensive work in the areas of language-based disabilities, and they're coming in to provide some modeling, working with our teachers that are co-teaching as well, general education teachers, special education teachers. They're also coming to our January 13th Professional Development Day to provide some support there. They'll be supporting both the teachers, and then in the afternoons working with our teaching assistants as well, because they're an integral part of the teaching as well. And we'll just keep moving forward with those pieces.
Any questions on the last one?
Okay, so that's our all students objective. Now we're moving into professional practice. Again, you can see the foundations, the phase 1 and the phase 2, and we'll really get into the phase 1. The first one is really around leadership structures. And last year, as you can tell by our work plan here, we really talked about leadership within student services, and I feel like we, through the budget process and through some hiring, addressed that. This year, it's really about leadership at the high school. Specifically, obviously, we're going to be starting a principal search. I'll talk about that soon and the timing. But also, do we have the right leadership structure at the high school? So if you remember last year, we created department coordinators, and that, you know, was that a good move? Was that not a good move? What are people's feelings on that? But also, is the current structure working? So I'm assuming we're going to get some kind of thoughts about that during our budget process. And then the other thing is our current schedule working? And I don't see any. I think it's very fair to say we're not going to be changing the schedule at the high school for next year, but the question is, do we want to start a process to look at the trimester schedule, and if that is the best for our students? So that is something that I have asked the Deb Holman, the interim principal, to say, is this something we want to go to? It would be a multi-year process, but I think we need a yay or nay on whether or not we open, frankly, that Pandora's box. So those are what I would say on that one.
Any questions on that aspect of it?
I do have a couple questions on that. I think I might be wrong, but typos in some of the years. So recommend best option for,
Yeah, that's wrong.
it's 2017, right?
2017.
Okay, and I think that also happens to the next one, too.
Yep, you're right. Thank you.
That's all.
We'll take care of that. I appreciate that. It gets hard when you start doing these
Yes,
years.
it does.
Something's completed already.
Well, yes, also, yeah.
That's a good news.
What's the foundation in place?
Yeah. So, Mr. Gilligan, professional development?
Sure. If you look into the professional practice of providing rigorous professional development, I first want to draw your attention to the Research for Better Teaching, the Skillful Teacher. One of the things we've done really well here in North Andover over the past few years is the teachers looking at student work and the collaboration. And really that next step to take that another step forward is teachers working on their craft and the actual art of teaching. So right now, this year, we have 25 new teachers, or newer teachers in their first, second, or third year in the district, taking a course called the Skillful Teacher, Foundations in Teaching. And tomorrow is the second session of it. It's really been excellent. It's a mix of teachers from the elementary, middle, and high school, general education, along with special education. One of the great things about this year is we also have 2 administrators sitting in. Carol Lockham and Lorene Marks, and also Kelly Driscoll from the high school. One of the goals is they sit in this year on this course. Next year, they'll have the opportunity to teach this course to our new folks, and we'll be able to offer other courses for more of our middling teachers and veteran teachers around engaging all students. So it's pretty exciting as part of the plan. Secondly, I'd like to bring you down to the library media specialists. And there's really been 2 great things that have happened. It did take a little bit of work, Lorene Marks and Mike Grant working with all the principals, but they've developed schedules so that 2 things can happen. One is that the librarians can actually work with classroom teachers around integrating best practices and research, and that's the first step. That's going to be ongoing. But the second piece is it also provides time for teachers to get together, look at student work on a every other basis, visit to the library. And that's really excellent, and the principals have been really excited about that as well. And the last piece about the rigorous professional development is you'll see there the Ed Camp. Last year we ran an education camp. We had 513 participants, which is pretty amazing. The MTA helped us run it and get it off the ground last year. It's something that came out of the tech field for professional development in IT, and it's really taken off. And it was the largest one the MTA has helped run in all of Massachusetts at one time. And the neat thing about it is it's not only special educators, general educators, specialists, it was every single teaching assistant in the district as well. And it really gives an opportunity for pre-K through 12 mixed PD opportunities in different sessions based on interests. And this year we're going to run the same type of thing on January 13th, although this year we'll have some more pre-booked sessions early on to meet some of the needs based on some surveys we're doing with teachers and working with special education. So pretty excited about that.
Can I assume you're looking at if the date's already passed, that means that's complete?
Which one, Stan?
Well, September 2016.
I would say that, the
August 2.
Yeah, the schedule's
Yeah.
complete. The elementary librarians are all in place. The 2.5 elementary librarians.
I'm just trying to compare it to the previous one, which is completed with no date and a date, but no complete.
Yeah, yes. So
Something
we were meeting
just-
last school year. If it's on this school year, it's not completed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I get it.
Great.
That's all I need.
Sure. So, reflecting on our public comment we had from Mr. Schneiderman last week, where would I look to identify where our differentiated education and/or stretching the capabilities of the students are? Would it be inherent professional practices or in consistent, rigorous curriculum? Okay, great. Thank you.
So the next one is around the comprehensive human resources model. You've met Carrie Wahlberg, so that's the biggest change. Getting pretty strong reviews from the faculty and staff about the responsiveness of our human resources department. I just wanted to draw your attention to 2 of the first 2 items. The first is to assess and adapt the evaluation process for teaching assistants and teachers. We made some tweaks this summer to that. The teaching assistant evaluation tool is not great. Everyone admits that, but we made a few changes to make it slightly better. But we understand that during the IBB process, we're going to have to really revamp that. We have a committee ready to go for the teacher evaluation, but we did have a joint letter that I did send to you a few months ago from myself and the North Andover Teachers Association about some changes and some additional stuff we did for the teachers evaluation process. And as you remember, we did that MOA around the directed growth plan. So we're trying to kind of tweak what we have, but we do understand there's going to be some significant changes moving forward. And then the other is, many of you were there, the PTS ceremony, and really to kind of make this concept of really emphasizing in the importance of professional teacher status. And I think that ceremony was a good example of our efforts to do that. Yeah. All right.
Any questions on that?
Moving
Okay.
on to the consistent and rigorous curriculum. Again, the overview sheet, and then we'll get into it. Mr. Gilligan, the multi-year curriculum plan, which we've been working on for a while now.
We have. It's very exciting. Draw your attention, if you go down to create a consistent documentation of math curriculum K through 12 and review of instructional resources. Two things are happening. A working group started last summer, a math committee with educators K through 12, looking at, by the end of this school year, designing units through a backwards design so that every grade level has a map of exactly the what we want to teach. And it's really refining that. Curriculum documentation can be an ongoing process. And the second component of that is we're looking to make a recommendation for elementary resource to use for a consistent and rigorous curriculum. And as you see, we're looking to do that for March of 17 with the understanding that we know that we'll be looking to use the Medicaid money coming in. That being said, an update on that is we've worked really closely with we use a math consultant who's excellent, and we've been working closely with the Northeast Consortium for Staff Development. It's a group of 22 other communities of curriculum leaders. So we've done a lot of work with surveys, looking with them. There's not right now a consensus out there in the education world in Massachusetts that there's a best product to support mathematics at this time because of the shifts in Common Core, and a lot of the big companies that really support California, Texas, and Florida have just slapped stickers on books that say Common Core. What I can say is a status update right now is we're hoping to have a recommendation by March, but if the recommendation was to hold off a year on that, we also have a plan B around literacy, because we have a lot of momentum going with that. That being said, at this time, really there's two different programs at the elementary that we've been looking at, and that's one's called Eureka and one's called Go Math. Go Math is just the updated version of our old Houghton Mifflin, and Eureka is a little bit of a different program. So that's something where we're gathering more information from other communities, some information from our own teachers using that, and also teachers will be swapping units to teach a little bit from each as we go forward. So hopefully we can make a recommendation. But really right now in Massachusetts, it's a tough question for a lot of communities, because a lot of communities are going away from traditional resources and more open source technology. And the other things that the textbook companies have done is they've really done away at the elementary level with textbooks that are physical, they're consumables. So that's something, they offer good deals and then eventually you have to pay. So we're looking at that. We want to make sure that it's thoughtful. We're doing what's best by our kids, for our kids. And it's a great group of teachers working on the committee, and we have an awesome consultant.
Does open source seem like a practical approach to use for
Stan, I think it's a little too early for me to comment on that. What I would say is some of the districts that are using that in conjunction with something else.
It's hard to rely solely on open source. It puts a lot of
It's a good supplemental piece is what we've seen so far.
So is there opportunity to leverage what we've done in the middle school and see what we might be able to push down to the lower grades in terms of hands-on and practical experience? I mean, I'm a victim or a product of ISCUS back in the early days of math and science, and I recall getting engaged because of that practical hands-on approach.
One thing I can say is, regardless of what resource we eventually select here in North Andover to use to best support our elementary schools, one of the key components to it is, and it doesn't matter what program it is, it would be something like standard manipulatives that were used at all different grade levels that come basically with all different types of math programs. So what that may look like, something hands-on, and that's absolutely, the goal is to make things so it's a practical application. Right.
Thank you.
And also, if you go right below there, two down, the ELL curriculum and program review, just a status update. I want to let you know that we're able to hire a consultant that's going to do a review for us. The consultant comes to us with over 20 years experience. She's a principal in a local community with a high ELL population, and she also teaches at Harvard as well as a state trainer in ELL. So we're pretty excited to be able to bring this person in. So the first series of the ELL review will be a meeting with Donna, myself, and the consultant, and then they'll be looking at our curriculum. They'll be meeting with staff, and we hope to have a review for that as well by March of 2017, understanding that we'll be looking to use that curriculum money.
Mr. Gilly, you want to keep going on a common assessment?
I'm on a roll, so yeah. If you go to the next page, continuous and rigorous curriculum. If you look down under action items, the second one, teacher collaboration to look at student work, examine common assessment data, and share best practice. And I think that's something we've really done well. As I say, we're looking now at that last step, bringing that full circle of the sharing best practice. This is ongoing work. It's exciting work. And what I can tell you is a couple weeks ago, Dr. Price and I got to go to North Andover High School, and they were right before they did their MCAS presentation. So they were looking at, a little bit how the MCAS did, but they also, it was an opportunity for teachers to present lessons on the teachers who did really well in particular areas of what are the best strategies and lessons they've used to achieve that. So it was really nice to share, and that work's going on not only at the high school, but all the different levels as well. So that's something we've got to continue to do and continue to do well with the focus on practice.
And this is the one.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is beyond. Well, I would say it's the first two. I mean, I think we've tried to make some decisions around the curriculum, for instance, and I know it doesn't necessarily address the high school because the high school is slightly different, but, when we made the decisions around the writing curriculum, we picked a curriculum that we believed would differentiate to meet the needs of all students. And I know the one that we were talking about, I've said my daughter, who writes very well, found Lucy Calkins to kind of be her launching point, right? Because it allows kids to go very deep and very far. So we're really making sure that we're making decisions around curricular decisions that allow to meet the needs of all kids. And by all, that often is kind of a cloak for kids who struggle, but we're saying also kids who do well.
Depth and distance.
Depth and distance. And I think the next one, the one that we've talked about here, is kind of the learner-centered things that allow kids to really go deep on something. And so, for instance, this idea of a senior capstone project, which we're going to pilot. Christy Morley is going to be teaching that this spring. We're funding it. You'll see there's some numbers here, Stan. We're funding that through our Chinese students who are here through Cambridge Institute, but really allow kids to go deep on something they're passionate about for their third term senior year, and research, go really into something that gets them excited. And I have incredible experience with this in allowing kids to kind of, it's a wonderful bridge to post-secondary education. So there's one example, and we're excited. Our hope is to have at least 8 kids participate. I think we'll probably shatter that goal, but it's a good starting point. Also, many of you were involved in the next one, which is to ensure that all kids have travel and service can access to our travel experiences. Pleased to report that we made close to $7,000 that night at the dinner, which will probably allow 4 or 5 kids to travel who wouldn't have been able to. So that's very exciting, and we had a good time. So that's and then. I just want to talk about our continued relationship with Stevens Memorial Library. There's been so many exciting things going around this one author, one community, things that have been happening. There's a story walk-up now downtown. If you can walk through and see the books, Jackie Woodson's books, and you can walk through and go from shop to shop and read the whole book. There's at least 1 or 2 more of those story walks going up. There was an event on Election Day where you could go down to the library, and she's coming here in 2 weeks. So actually less than that, a week and a half. So, another example of depth and distance is a relationship with it's not even on here, I'll put it on here, is we are working very closely with the library for a program called Girls Who Code, which is an opportunity for kids 6th through 12th grade. Something else actually that my daughter does. And it's we are actually providing 21 Chromebooks that we're going to give and embed in the library, which will allow our students to be able to use that for Girls Who Code. So it's a relationship. The library is providing time and space. We're providing the electronic resources, and we have 2 parents who are volunteering their time to teach 20 girls to learn to code. So again, another opportunity to push kids in a way.
And I can't tell you how impressed I am by that. That's a very impressive activity. And really, the collaborative part of that is just part of it, right? Just doing it at all and making the resources available is excellent.
We're also really excited about the 21 Chromebooks because when they're not using them Monday night for the Girls Who Code, our students will be able to go check out a Chromebook at the library and log into their Google account quickly because we're going to set it up. So it'll be a wonderful partnership, again, with the library. And we just keep finding ways to make the library and the schools feel much more connected.
My sense of it is that you've gotten good cooperation from the library staff.
Oh,
The
fabulous.
director and everybody
Fabulous.
has
I
been very
mean,
supportive of.
They've not said no to us yet.
That's what I was just going to say, the same thing.
And I think they're finding the relationship is very
Good
positive.
for them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, good for them.
And it's crazy not to have a good relationship with the public library.
Well, yeah, I guess my question is, why did we never do this before? Why didn't this? What? Oh, sorry.
We're not going to delve in that one.
Okay, just moving right along.
They were super supportive when we did the professional teacher status and the Educator Hall of Fame event.
Yeah, fabulous.
Absolutely.
All right, and then moving on to our last initiative, which is one that we, again, also share. There's a lot here we've talked about with Mike coming in and giving all the updates on technology. I wanted to draw your attention to the third from the bottom, which is assess our current status of instructional materials. So we talk a lot about infrastructure and technology, but one of the other components of this goal is not only the technology, but to provide faculty with up-to-date instructional materials. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that Gilly and Mike Grant are going to do is actually do an assessment inventory of all of our instructional materials so that pre-K to 12, mostly K to 12, but and really where are we teaching out of history books that are 20 years old, and really get an assessment. I think that's going to be especially important for the high school because the bigger purchases that we're making right now are kind of these K to 5 or K to 8 programs, but the middle school and the high school are really using some dated instructional materials, and as the Medicaid funds come in, we will be able to make purchases in those areas that'll be smart and thoughtful. So that will help us move forward, especially at the middle and the high school, in ways that we can't quite yet articulate, but kind of staged thinking about how to. And there's tough decisions right now to make about purchase of instructional materials. Do you go digital? Do you buy the book? And I think that there's not one answer to that. So that's just one, because we have not talked about that part of it.
I was going to actually ask exactly that, so I really appreciate it because there's been so much focus on this, K to 5,
Yep.
K to 8 maybe curriculum, but what's going on up there? So thank you, that's great.
Yeah.
What's the thought here on software in addition to the physical materials?
Yeah, just what software are people using, what's compatible, what do we need to make sure that we have, what do we need to buy. I mean, more and more of our software is becoming open source stuff, so it's less of an expense than it used to be, but are there software that's needed for particular, for Mr. Sturdivant at the middle school or for, our art classes or at the high school. So it's that kind of stuff. We don't want to, yeah. We just need to get an inventory. We don't have a good comprehensive inventory, and then allow us to come up with a plan.
So, quick question, the fifth item, enhanced infrastructure, was that this year or was that last year?
No, actually, with the funds that came in, it's both. We did it last year and we did it this year, so I will change that to both. We just are doing it again.
Okay.
We are, with the funds that came in from the model classroom donation for the PTOs, we are buying switches for the middle school. And they just got put in. So last year we did Kittredge in the high school, and this year we're doing the middle school, so it's both. But it should be December 17 for the middle school. Aruba just brought a whole bunch of things. So the boxes, I think, are downstairs.
Thank you.
So, and then that's the glossary. That's kind of it.
Okay, that was the first reading of the strategic plan, is that correct?
Yes, and I
feel like it's been like this.
I know. My thought was that if it would be okay, I think it's important we vote this. So I thought if we did a first reading and then at the next meeting we don't really talk about it anymore.
So if we have any questions, should we just reach out directly to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
If there's something you don't understand, or if there's something you want
But
me
if
to
it's
explain.
important, if it's important to bring up at our next meeting, let's bring up the next meeting.
Yeah,
So, but I mean, I like that.
Things just be clarified.
Right. Yeah.
I appreciate all the timeline column. This is
great.
Well, I would just say that this is so far beyond anything we've ever seen before on the school committee that this looks like a real plan for once, right? I would say.
Yeah,
So.
the equities delivered, and this is phenomenal. And to see this, it just reinforces that we're firing on all cylinders. So thank you.
I think the best part is we had a meeting, just a little bit of process. We had a meeting with the leadership team on Monday, and we tuned this. We used the tuning protocol, and we broke into groups, and we looked at all the different parts of it. And two things. I think most people thought this was really in tune, so there were some changes we made. But then the second thing is what I said to all of them. I said, this document is not worth a thing if we don't own it. and we all have to own it. And I think that's also part of the responsibility chart there, is that people know what they own, right? So it's not like it's an amorphous. I think that's another really important part. And the last thing is, it's exciting for us because a bunch of this stuff, like we look at this, I know that, for instance, Dr. Straight has her areas up on her wall in her office, right? And kind of wherever I head, I see around the district, I see this. And the thing is that, like, we're getting it done. I mean, that also feels good to say, yes, we did that, right? And that's why the output side of it is really nice, because it feels like, check, we got something done, you know?
But it takes this level of detail that they have to get that people will sign and dates, right?
Right.
So,
But it's also a living document. I mean, you're going to end up having a phase one's going to move to completed. They're going to have a new
Yes.
phase two, you know. Or,
And you get the reflective perspective of did it work, did it work?
Right.
And are we moving the KPIs that are now identified?
right.
Right.
Great. That's great.
I'd just like to thank everyone's work on it. It's been a collective effort.
Thank you, Dr. Price. All right, moving on to new business. Discussion of the FY18 budget.
Directives.
Yeah, okay, so this is FY17. I'm just getting my dates right.
This is what was last year, so we use this as a jumping off
right.
point for. Yeah.
As built.
So now we have to come up with FY18. We did not accomplish our goal, as if you remember when we talked, but that was, we had 83 additional students.
Right.
There's
There's a lot of things that obviously, you know, until, at least, you know, the first part of this, until we really address what we're going to address in the next couple of weeks, as far as reducing class size, you know, we're not going to be able to, put the numbers in, no question about it.
So,
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
I was going to say, but we could agree, or at least have a conversation about where we think the threshold of acceptability is. And if we can get to that with the plan, then, you know, that's extra credit.
I mean, these numbers still drive the additional classroom resource
I
problem,
think it's more
right?
the percentage that you're talking about,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. But I think the absolutes are also still very, very valuable.
So if you remember, you did change from 28 to 29, from 29 to 28, and we did make a decision to move a family rather than put a 29th kid in a class based on this. And I would encourage us to keep that. As you know, I think 28 is too high, but that was helpful. And, you know, as we talk about the plan, you know, respectfully, I think 100% of our classes should fall between 18 and 22 for K through 2, and 23 to 25 through 3 through 5. That should be our goal. And I'm not even sure that's not a highly aggressive goal, but it's, you know, the many districts would say even 25 in a third, fourth, or fifth grade is too high. So, but that being said, I mean, you know, I think our goal around the conversations in the next few weeks is to get to 100%.
But would it, based on that, though, would it still be useful for us to put a mark on the wall to go from, say, 35 to 25 or 35 to 20, or just to put some pressure on the system to say we want to move?
Without the additional cost.
I understand, but I mean, if
The number on the wall.
I understand, but you know, it's that I would hope would put the pressure on the classroom project. That's really important. We can't do that without this, right?
I don't think that number is going to put the pressure on the classroom project. I think the influx of students and at least 2 new developments that are going in town are going to put the pressure on that.
Okay.
But with that said, I think there's evidence that the guidelines did drive the behaviors, which is exactly why we felt, at least in the past, these were important.
But our goal to reduce.
But let me just say, I could set a goal and I could achieve that goal if I wanted to redistrict today. I could move students today.
No, we couldn't.
You don't have enough place to put them.
There are classes that are under these guidelines.
Yeah, but we could not meet 18 to 22 in K through 2 if you wanted to redistrict, and we wouldn't be close.
And it would
There are
incur
28
additional,
kids in
it would incur
second grade.
transportation costs.
Right. No, I understand. I mean, everything.
We may have one school with first grade that they may be at 20. However, the rest of them are clearly not.
Right. Yeah. So given the reality of, a build program is necessary, do we want to specifically address part of where we're trying to get to? So do we specifically want to ensure that we will get to no more than 22 in K through 2?
By when?
That's the plan.
By the completion of,
Without
Without FY18.
Just a quick example, 343 kindergartners divided by 15 classes, it's 22.8 if we moved them all.
We need to point it.
Whose kid wants to be the 0.8?
But again, if you did the same thing first grade, what would that be?
I don't have the numbers on top of my
I'm just saying.
I just know how many
I'm just
kindergartners
saying,
we have.
we're not going to reach zero here. I'm not suggesting that. But could we reach 25 if we?
So we're over 40% this year, so that would be an
Okay,
aggressive goal for
okay,
next year.
okay,
Because if you
okay.
remember, we have 73 new students, and so that drove the...
a lot of new construction.
Should we then set an aspirational goal for 19 and put it in here?
So the goal, for me,
Mm-hmm.
a 19 goal is much more feasible than an 18 goal.
You know, I'm thinking about going on record with the community to say we are working this problem, and here's our goal. We can't do it next year, but we're focused on doing something about this, and here's what we'd like to be able to do. I'm just saying.
I don't feel comfortable putting that in here until we see the report.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. No, I
And I
understand.
know that this is a first draft, and I will still be in favor of 18 to 22 and 23 to 25.
Yeah.
However, if that report comes back and something in it says that there's no way that this is possible, then I think we need to have some very different conversations.
I think that's fair.
so did I hear you right? We're going to miss the 35% in 2017?
We did miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Over 40.
It's the presentation I gave at the beginning of the year on
Yeah.
class sizes, and that was just solely that we did increase by one class in the district at the elementary level, but that did not account for the additional students at the elementary level. So we did not decrease.
Right now, second grade's a little over 24.
Yeah.
And first grade is smaller. It's a little bit over 21 for all the schools. Average, if you average out all the schools.
Because if you remember, last year's kindergarten class was small.
yes.
Well, I'm not sure how to word this, but there's so many factors that are out of our control to meet these goals. I mean, obviously, the influx of students coming in. I just feel kind of what Mr. Lemper was saying, and I really think that in FY19 we can take a real big step to reducing class size in K through 5, and I don't think we need to mess with this too much because I don't think we're going to really achieve anything more in FY18 than what we've done so far.
Well, we did it, so. We can't start at 40%.
We didn't do
We're already at
it. We didn't do it.
Right, that's what I mean. So we can't start at 40 because we're already over 40.
I
So
can
we
get us the
can't-
exact number for next time.
Right.
It's very close.
And it doesn't sound like our absolute no class exceeding 28 can be moved either.
No,
We've been at the 28 for a little while, and
Yeah.
every year there's people that we have to move out because there's just...
Because we have 28 in some of our third. I mean, so then you're saying you have to move a kid who's been in the third grade when they go to fourth grade? That doesn't work.
Do we think we can make demonstrable progress in the percentage over the guideline by 2019?
If we have additional classroom spaces, we can.
And if we do we feel comfortable, setting a stretch goal for more than 35%?
Yes.
Or lower than
If we have,
35%?
that's the goal. And we'll talk a lot about, I mean, I've got to run all the numbers based on the decision that we make. I think whatever decision we make, then we can get very concrete about the numbers, assuming that our projections are accurate.
Mr. Chair, I think that it's reasonable to be able to table this until...
Oh, that's what I was saying.
But in the meantime, we still have other bullets.
Other goals, directives,
Can I ask about a different bullet when you get a chance?
Are we also with the class size one for now? Can we hold off on this for now? Everybody agree with that?
The plan is to wait until we get a proposal and then see what the numbers
I mean,
reflect.
What we're holding off is the percentages, not the guidelines, right? We're going to...
the details on that. Less than it's in the bullet.
They're tight.
Again, I just feel like it does make sense to set a goal that you know you can't meet.
Correct.
Right.
That's our desire. I don't know if we just want to wordsmith it, but I mean, yes?
On October 1st, we were 2116 with 90 classrooms, and that averages out to a little over 23 and a half for K through 5. So we have more students now, so.
Yeah.
And just one last question on this. So when we get this proposal, I know it's the feasibility, and it's really just from the architects, but at what point, and Mr. Mealy might be able to answer, somebody's here, are we going to be able to have some kind of rough projections with these new construction living facilities, what we might look at having for more students, roughly? Right.
Yeah,
At some point, we'll need that too. Okay.
He's been working very hard on that.
I know he has, yeah.
With, economic.
Right, okay.
Kafori.
Because we're going to need, that's factors into this whole decision too.
Is that bad? I'm sorry.
No, I was trying to think of you talking about, and then she said.
There we go. A different budget item. It seems to me that whether it's the third bullet or whatever, that it would be nice to have something in here about, aligning with the objectives within the strategic plan. So as I'm looking to build the budget, these are directives to me as I build the budget, something that acknowledges that items within the strategic plan are important for me to prioritize in the budget process. If that makes sense. I don't know if that replaces 3 or if we just add it at the end, but I'm just thinking that the strategic plan is really kind of the guiding document. So that's just something there.
So if I could, the whole point of performance-based budgeting was that we would set KPIs and we would drive to those. The strategic plan has some good key performance indicators. Are you proposing that there's a difference that maybe performance-based budgeting is not the process we want to follow? Or is it wordsmithing?
To me, it's that the performance I'm looking for is outlined within the strategic plan.
So you just need the connection?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could it be just that bullet rewarding?
Or it could be a different bullet, that's why I said it. But it seems to me that we need something. There's parts of the strategic plan, technology, curriculum materials, all of that, but some kind of overarching as I build the budget.
So the word targeted initiatives in the first line is replaced with the strategic plan?
Yeah, perfect, something like that.
Okay.
I just think we should have it in there. Because, as we're making budget decisions, is this directly related to our strategic plan? Is something that I know I will use, is it in or out?
Right.
Well, if we're talking about that, and obviously the strategic plan has a pretty specific plan with the curriculum.
Yep.
And I think I'm missing my count here, but 2 from the bottom. Working toward the goal of ensuring our curriculum materials are up to date and aligned to state standards. That is directly in the strategic plan. So if it's already there, it's already there.
That becomes redundant then, right?
Absolutely.
So that, you're saying, suggesting that vote could probably eliminate that?
Correct.
Now that we have a robust strategic plan.
Right.
Okay, so that means that we want to just make sure that third bullet is what we want to say about the strategic plan and what
In
we're
its
doing.
entirety.
Yeah.
Sure that we're funding the key elements of our strategic plan.
Do we want to leave technology in there then? Is
It's
that?
also in the strategic.
It's in the strategic plan.
And I'm looking at the last one there. The high needs learners, special education services, again, I hate to say
Strategic
it.
It's all in there.
It's in the strategic plan.
In some respects, it's easier to just say, look, it's about class size, it's about.
Well, actually, class size is in the strategic plan too.
Well,
I think you'd
But I think you want to
call everything out, yeah.
And I might also suggest, because of the other initiatives, model classroom and all that, we might want to keep technology out too. It's something to think about, right? Just to, these are as much for the community as they are for you, to let people know that it's still on our radar, we're still doing it.
Yeah, I think for the first time, we have an extremely detailed strategic plan.
Correct.
And so
Correct.
where we had guesswork of what was going on,
Yep.
we had this.
Yep.
We now have
Yep.
what we've been asking.
But-
We don't have it.
No, I think it is a very nice, high-level one-pager for the community to look at, and without having to go into, page 12 of the strategic plan or wherever, and so that Dr. Price,
Right,
when she's
right,
meeting with
right.
Mr. Mailer or the selectmen, FinCom, these are my directives, right? Further supported by the strategic plan, which has also been approved by the school committee. Right, but I think to specifically call out, why are we here? And we are here because we are concerned about the level of, or the number of students that are in the classroom. We are concerned about the technology, and we are concerned about textbooks that reference the first George W. as being president. I mean, that's just, stuff is so old and outdated.
But the crossover too here, that help me out, is the link to the strategic plan in budget directives is to quantify the strategic plan in dollars and cents, right? That's what the link is. So to the extent that we're directing the superintendent, please do that for us so that we know what we're going to, how we're linking the budget to what you said here, which we like and agree with. That's what, to me, that's what the budget directive is. We're tasking the superintendent and staff to make that linkage, or not, or
Well, I also
maybe
think
I'm
the other
missing.
way, right? In order for us to have a robust budget, we have a good strategic plan now, but we're going to see what it's going to cost.
Right.
Right,
And
but
that's, I think, the reciprocal part
this
of
could be the
budget
tasking.
directive.
Now that we have which we like, cost it for us and put it in the budget.
Yeah,
You can
exactly.
list
That's
the
what this
language
bullet-
right out of the strategic plan.
I just want to be clear, cost this phase for us.
Yeah, yes.
No, that's
But I mean, that's what we need
That's
to.
all I'm going to be able to do.
Yeah, no, but that's, we should be feeding that back just in
I'll lift the
black and
language
white,
right out of the
that's all.
plan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
so let me ask you, as a consumer of this, right, you're going to feed into it, but as a consumer, what is there anything here that you would need that isn't here in your decision-making process?
No, I just wanted an explicit link to the strategic plan, because I'm going to be using the strategic plan to make decisions.
On your wall.
Okay.
Yeah,
So, yes.
right. I mean, I just want to be transparent that when I'm making decisions, and we're making decisions, I'm asking, as Mr. Gilligan and Dr. Straight will
You're not
say,
looking at this document and driving the budget. You're looking at this one.
I am.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And maybe it's the front page of this document that is what we're talking about. And it could be.
I think both can be. I think you can have both, because I think that this means something. I think that this document means this is your guidelines. I just think we need to have the two linked. That's all.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So, do we want to table this until we have the program schedule or the program particulars to review, and then we can discuss whether just a single link to strategic plan, or do we want to call out technology and special needs or high needs learners as a separate focus, or what do you want to do here?
Well, I think regardless, we need to wordsmith this whole thing. Again, this document that we have in front of us is really not as useful as it might have been. And I, for one, again, not to repeat myself again, but it makes no sense to set goals that you can't meet. That's my opinion. I don't know how obviously it's a board decision, but we're not going to meet these goals in FY18. And I don't find.
Which goals? I'm sorry.
Well, the first ones, about the class size.
The guidelines or the goal?
This is the budget directive. It says our goal remains class sizes of K-2, class size 18 to 22. We're not going to meet that. Maybe FY19 we meet that, but we're not going to meet that in FY18. So to direct our superintendent to create a budget that meets that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me.
I hear what you're saying, although I think it's behooving of us to ensure that the public understands that there is a gap between what we want to do, what we think we need to do, and what we can do. And by having this, and over the years, this has been the mechanism by which we can continuously point to, we're not at our goal. And I think I disagree somewhat that a goal doesn't necessarily need to always be attainable. I mean, a stretch goal you're never going to attain, or it would be very difficult to attain. But with that said, I think this is the visibility of where we really think we need to be that we cannot accomplish.
I'm going to be very proud of this board and the town if we accomplish what we've been talking about, and I think that will meet the goal. So, to me, this seems like an exercise, and you say this is the document that the community looks at to see, what our It seems to be an exercise that we're just doing for the sake of doing. And I think I've talked about this in the past. I'm willing to defer to the committee on it, but I feel very confident that the superintendent knows by looking at her strategic plan how she uses the budget. At least for FY18.
But isn't there a way to word it so that we say that we're working toward this, however, we understand that we don't have the resources in place for this next fiscal year to achieve our desire?
That's what I would think. I would think we would want to continue having these as guidelines or goals or whatever word you want to use, right?
Well, they're two different things. Guidelines and goals are, in my opinion, two different
But
things.
the
Our desire to have these class sizes, which I think is a worthy goal.
Yeah.
I want to get here too.
Right.
But I know FY18, we're not getting there. FY19, if things go as we hope they go in the next several months, I'm all in.
Yep. But I mean, we could put that in the school to go from whatever we are at the number you give us for this year to whatever number we think we can make if we accept one version of a plan we may see,
But that's not fixed.
right?
And I think I would encourage you to be clear that there's facility restraints. It's this year, for next year, looking at the budget, it's not going to necessarily be operating constraints. We will be able to add a few teachers, but we can't add teachers where we have no classrooms.
I still think the goal is that classroom sizes at the K-2 level are under 22. And if that then is, I hate to say, a criteria or something that drives a student to have to go to another school who has moved into our district, then I think that gives Dr. Price and the rest of the administration team the support in order to do that. We may not hit that. We may literally just have 23, right, that are out there. And we're not going to hit that at the second grade level. But I think if we don't include that and say, this is our goal and this is what we are working towards, it's not that we are working towards it this year. This is what we are working towards as a community. And that's where we're going.
That's what this maybe I'm wrong. I thought this document was to provide guidance to the superintendent about what our budget directives were for FY18.
It is, but the goals may not be a year away.
Right.
Just like phase one is all that we're covering in our strategic plan.
So if you remember, right, part of the goal is to do this, and we know that there's additional classrooms that conceivably are coming. So Dr. Price put it into the budget last year for those teachers, those placeholders to be there for some of them, because we cannot absorb a jump of, correct me if I'm wrong here, of 4 or 6 different teachers, additional teachers in 2 more years. So we budgeted in to this past year, and some of those went to furniture and some of Lucy Calkins. But that is there, and that is now a step that has been taken to get us to that goal.
We've already accepted the multi-year goal.
And that's important, because I would think that it's a really interesting point, that I would think my FY18 budget is going to include additional teachers that I will not actually hire.
Until there's a facility to put them in.
So you're creating FTE slots with the teacher.
Correct.
And that is appropriate to set to our goal, right, to address the class size guidelines that we're establishing. So, with that as the aha, does it make sense to continue to articulate where we want to be? I mean, we haven't met this in the last 6 years, as far as I can tell. And Mr. Lippert, I assume you can give us a little more history there.
Yeah.
So I mean, but it's still we need to be working towards that.
This is just the first reading. I mean, we'll come back after we look at the report.
What does the committee wants to do? What's your pleasure?
Well, I mean, it's the first reading, so I think we're waiting regardless for the report on December. I would recommend that after we have absorbed that information, that we vote on these directives at the following meeting, which I think is, I was going to say the 16th, but 15th.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would also request, Dr. Price, that if you could take a cut at some of the words here
I will.
that would make you feel more comfortable. Yeah.
Around the putting the strategic plan in.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Is that okay?
Yeah. At least that one bullet, yeah. I'm good.
Sounds good.
It makes sense.
Okay.
Any other questions or
No,
concerns or
no.
ideas on this?
No?
Last thing, public comment.
That's easy. That's easy.
School committee comment.
Yeah, I do. So I just have to reflect on the past 5 years and 8 months on the committee, having 3 superintendents, and actually, as we've seen in the strategic plan, actually getting a central office and organization that's really hitting on all 4 cylinders, or more than 4 in this case. I just have to indicate that I think we're on the right track. As many people have known, my job responsibilities have grown outside of the school committee, and a significant amount of business travel has resulted, which has impeded my abilities to be, in my mind, an effective member of this committee. So as a result, I've decided not to seek re-election, and I would like to pass that out to the community, who hopefully will take that to heart. I expect to continue and support the rest of the term. I'm looking forward to helping this committee move forward, but at the end of this term, my term, I will be looking for alternative ways to serve my community other than on the school committee. So I just wanted to make that available to you, and beg your forgiveness for the scheduling commitments and challenges that I've caused to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Gross. We appreciate that as well. Good luck with all the travel that you do.
And I
certainly miss you when you're...
Well, you don't get rid of me before March. However, with that said, I hope.
Open seat in the board of selectmen.
Yeah, right. Please. Do you have to be in presence for that too? But, well, no, but I certainly hope that this does cause people. We saw a lot of very high qualified people voice interest in the position. If you have any questions about if this is something of interest, I can certainly be available to answer questions. I'm sure as any other committee member. I know that there are some very energized, excited, and qualified people, and I am confident that as I move on to other challenges, that we'll find someone to stand up in the community. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to quickly say, I had the pleasure of going to the Live Your Learning educational experience. The food was, as promised, fantastic. The wait staff.
No ptomaine?
Wait staff was wait staff. We'll just leave it at that. But it was an amazing experience, and there's already a little bit of buzz coming for next year, and we talked a little bit about this as well. But I thought it was really valuable, not just for the teachers to get up, but the parent impact to speak. And Ann and I have known each other for years, and we're both returned Peace Corps volunteers, and so we understand the impact of kind of being abroad and living abroad and seeing the differences that were there. And I thought she gave a really interesting perspective to all of that. So again, thank you for helping to bring this to North Andover. I see great things in the future for it. And there's been a lot of buzz and chatter about some of the things that I think we talk about here. School size is something that's kind of come up. I don't know if it's just a recent thing, but I've just been feeling a lot more talk about that. And I think people are kind of anticipating the December 1st kind of report out. So my question is really a little bit to you in terms of just conduct. How do we make sure that people are aware of that presentation so that they are included? And what I don't want to have happen, which I feel could happen, is, well, this is what I heard. Well, no, that's what you heard. You know, I'd love to be able to make sure people know and understand that is a great forum to just get it right from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, so I'll also defer to Ms. Mabley, because we've talked about this a bit. One is that I'm going to get the December newsletter out a little early, so as soon as the report is made public, I'm going to send out the December newsletter and remind people about the December 1st meeting. So I will send an email to every parent in the community with a link on the front page to the report, because I really think it's so important that people know. And then we've been working with the PTO co-presidents to really get the PTOs to understand. So I've already been getting some emails. We got one today. You know, is there a one-page overview, which I think we need to... And so Amy was going to do a one-page overview that we were going to send out even now, so people could put...
also know where they can sign up for even getting the agendas sent to them. Like I get all of them. Yeah. Those things, how to see the archive if they can't for some reason watch live on the 1st. All those basic things, because sometimes it is hard to dig that stuff up on the websites. but making sure that we can put that in some of those school newsletters too.
So the other thing that I would just say is, there are lots of people obviously in this community who don't necessarily have children here, but pay taxes. And, I think it's a beginning first step. I know I have a number of neighbors, including one brand new, who are newlyweds. And I know we'll be starting families and we'll be having kids here. Not necessarily saying they're going to come run to this meeting, but I'd love for them to just, have the opportunity and be part of that. So do we have a plan for possibly trying to, I know Mr. Mailer does some pretty good tweets and,
Yeah, I'll tweet.
I know you tweet.
I will also do my my NCAM piece on it, which
Okay.
I do, and then I do get an opportunity to write something for your tax bill, which I'm sure you may or may not all open. But I will put something in there. So and I will ask the town manager to tweet something out too, because he's obviously very invested in this too.
I was going to ask about.
Yeah, I could reach out to the Eagle Tribune also. I'll do that, absolutely.
You could mess up the story. I would also say that, obviously, we're having the presentation on December 1st, but it's going to be on the website. We're not going to vote on this until December 15th, so that December 1st date, please come down. Those of you guys who are watching at home, please come down and fill the room. But there's plenty of time to look at it, examine it, give it some thought, and then send emails, send comments to all of us prior to the 15th when we'll be voting on the plan. So
It does give people a chance, if they came on the first, to provide some immediate feedback to us in terms of public comment about what their thinking is and what we have to be thinking about for the next 2 weeks.
sure, but I also think that you're going to get the information at that time. You may need to take some time to reflect on it and think about it a little bit more. You still have another 2 weeks, when you're not doing your shopping. No, sir?
Thank you.
Just to remind everybody, on this Saturday we have our first robotics competition of the season. Saturday at the high school again. Competition, the actual matches will probably start around 10 o'clock and run the rest of the day. And usually we hand out awards, in 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So it's a fun time to come, and particularly for kids. If you have kids that are at all interested or just want to see some fun stuff going on, please come down and watch what's going on. It's a fun day. Yeah, and participate, right? But it's really great. We have like 43 teams. Again, participating, competing this time, and we have lots of new people. This time we have a whole contingent from Snyder Electric, right? A group of 6 technical folks, engineers, programmers, software developers who are going to come and be judges this time. So we've developed a good connection there, and they're starting to provide some funding for the program too. So that's been great.
What's the time of that again?
It's 8 to 5, but really the competitions, matches start around 10 or a little thereafter and run till 4 typically. So anytime, just come. You can just see what's going on, right? So to get a flavor for what that's all about. And we've had great luck the past couple of years. We've sent teams to the world competition, the World Series of Vector Robotics, and we're doing very well. So we expect that to continue and hope to send some more teams. Yeah, absolutely. Come on down.
And we already covered what I was going to talk about, which was the spreading the word.
And if I may, I've been to a lot of events here at North Andover High School, at all of our events over 19 years. Last year was probably the best event I've ever attended in 19 years of attending anything here. It was put on by one of our students at the high school called Wrestle Olympics. It was many of our special education students in the community wrestling with the varsity wrestling team to raise money. And the young man that runs it, it was brought before the board last year, but the excitement in the air, the fun that all the families have, and the opportunity to bring all sorts of folks together, it's really special. So if anyone gets a chance, if anyone is still watching TV, it's tomorrow night at 6:30 at the high school gymnasium. It's $5 tickets at the door, and it's quite a show. Yeah. Dr. Price, do you want to add anything about it?
And we had 8 visitors from China today at the North Andover High School. Mr. Gilligan gave them a nice tour. They were quite impressed with our facilities.
very impressed, and probably the most thing they kept talking about Mr. Lippert was, not only do we have a student going to Harvard and Eric Duffy, but they were really excited about the robotics. They just couldn't stop with the robotics. And we had our students show, give them a little preview of what's to come Saturday.
That's great.
I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Lippert, second by Mr. McDevitt. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Ayes have it. We're adjourned.